slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit.
What is going on, everybody? Ryan Van Deaver, the Burn Podcast. How are we doing on this glorious Monday, October the 4th? What in the H-E double hockey sticks happened to the Colts last night? Yes, we will dive into that conundrum. That is unabashedly, I will attack. Yes, we will. When it comes to college football, 5 ranked teams lost to unranked opponents, including 3 that occupied the top 15 spots. In the ACC, Clemson lost to Louisville 33-21 in a shocking defeat. And in the Big 12, Iowa State ended up losing to Texas Tech, which opened the floodgates at the top of the conference. BYU in conference play, and Iowa State and Colorado are tied for second place. And sitting one game back is Kansas State, nipping at the Buffalo's heels, along with Texas Tech, with 2 losses in the conference. This conference is going to be one to keep an eye on in the next couple of weeks, because Colorado could easily win out, and Kansas State still has to play Iowa State, so anything can happen here. Then we will move on to talk a little bit about the Oklahoma City Thunder and how they are off to their best start in franchise history, sitting at 6-0 at the top of the Western Conference. How are they winning when their offense isn't even clicking on all cylinders? This we will discuss. And of course, we cannot forget about the World Series and what in the world happened in the 5th inning for the New York Yankees. So that is going to be the plan for today. So welcome back into the Burn with Ryan Van Deaver, presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. The information that you need, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. And with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. The Indianapolis Colts. I really did not want to talk about the Colts this week. I tried everything within my power to resist the urge to talk about the Colts, but here I am, a stubborn mule talking about the team that I love most. But after last night's game, I did not want to touch on this, but I believe if I didn't talk about this, it would be a disservice to all of you. So here I am, and here we go. We had heard all week that the benching of Anthony Richardson is what would be best for the Indianapolis Colts. But after last night's game against the Vikings, I'm not sure this was the case. We heard this from many outlets throughout the week, that the benching of Anthony Richardson is the right thing to do. The offense will be in better hands with Joe Flacco in there, and the Colts just went out there and took a massive dump on the Vikings field. I know, I keep saying this week after week, but this was the worst performance by an offense that I have seen all season long. Yeah, let's talk about it, shall we? The Colts' offensive output was 6 points, lowest of the season. Yes, I know they scored 13 points. Get over it. That was a defensive touchdown. This is offense. 0 red zone drives, again, lowest of the year. 13 first downs. Yes, I think you can see the trend now. 227 yards of total offense, lowest of the year. There are more statistics that I could put on here, but I think I've proven my point. The Colts came out last night and did absolutely the most minimal that they could have done. And the kicker here, not the actual field goal kicker, the kicker is that they did it on prime time television for the entire world to see. Talking about a massive embarrassment, an epic proportions. But hey, there is a silver lining here. And that is the fact that all of the stuff that I've been saying all season long has been proven for all of you NFL fans to see. I've heard the comments on social media. I've read them all. You think I'm crazy? That Anthony Richardson, many people said Anthony Richardson was going to win the MVP. That's what I heard in the preseason. Yeah, don't think that's happening. I did not believe a single word of it because unlike a lot of sports fans out there, when it comes to my teams, I am a realist. And I speak what I see that is put out on the field, and what I saw in the preseason was exactly this. But now the entire world sees that the Colts don't just have a problem at quarterback. It is a multi-dimensional problem. What's even worse about the game from last night against the Vikings is the defense gave the Colts a few gifts. And what did the Colts end up doing on the offensive rest of the game? Absolutely nada. I mean, the defense wasn't perfect by any means, but they created multiple turnovers, giving the offense even more opportunities, and the offense just couldn't do anything with it. The defense alone had 4 sacks, 2 picks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. Like, they did everything they could to keep the offense in the game. But nope. Everyone got a front row seat on the 50-yard line at how this organization is just an absolute failure on many levels on primetime TV. It starts at the top with Jim Irsay, down to the GM, Chris Ballard, and down to Shane Steichen, the head coach. Matt Gay can't seem to make a 50-yard field goal, even if his life depended on it. Ryan Kelly, the center for the Colts, played horrifically in the past couple of weeks, but is getting paid $20+ million a year. The receivers are dropping multiple catches throughout the games they play in. Shane Steichen can't seem to put together a proper game plan together with the right packages on a consistent basis. There are more problems than Anthony Richardson. It just feels like right now he has been claimed as the scapegoat. At some point, there's going to have to be a question that has to be asked. Why do the Colts fans continue to get gaslighted by ownership, by the GM, and by the head coach himself? We've been told all year that everything is fine. It started with the secondary in the preseason. They didn't want to bring anybody in that could affect the culture, or so we're told. And ever since, it's been the same thing. We continuously get gaslighted into acting like the Colts team is a playoff-bound team, and everything is sugar and rainbows and lollipops, when it is quite the opposite. It's kind of ironic that the upper management and ownership talk about accountability on the Colts, but they don't have any accountability of themselves. And I know a lot of Colts Nation doesn't want to hear anything like this, but this is just the facts. There's no clear direction for the franchise. And according to me, it starts at the top, and heads need to start to roll. And this is not an impatient fan. This is just what I see. This is what needs to be done. I mean, I have talked to multiple fans on social media and out in the world, out in the streets of this team. And unless you are a diehard fan, you're not following this team anymore. Like, you can even go back 5 years, and the Colts have not been able to put together a consistent product on the field that makes fans want to watch them. Fans know that eventually something catastrophic is going to happen, and the Colts are going to be unwatchable, like now. I mean, I could go back to Andrew Luck. That was the last time I believe the Colts were headed in the right direction. And then he retired. There is nothing that has given me great faith in this franchise ever since Chris Ballard was hired as GM. The absolute hilarity of the whole thing is that Shane Steichen says after the game, "It starts with me." Yeah, as Colts fans, we've heard that way too many times. I remember hearing it when Frank Reich said it in 2022. Honestly, how do you go from being an offensive genius with Gardner Minshew to this season? You are one of the more inept offenses in the league. Newsflash, Minshew is riding the bench for the Raiders franchise for Desmond Ridder, who they just signed off the street a couple of weeks ago. There has not been a single point in this season where the offense has looked anything like last year's version. I don't know if Steichen lost his mojo or if the Monstars took it, but this offense is putrid on so many levels. When the Colts play at noon on Sundays, I have to watch a game right after just to normalize myself that, okay, I'm actually watching football. Because when I watch the Colts play, it is not football. I don't know what in the HE double hockey sticks it is, but it is not American football. Like, can we consistently get first downs? Maybe a touchdown? They just can't do that. And then the national media wants to come out all last week and just bash Anthony Richardson. Now, let me just clear the air. What he did was wrong. What he did was the first thing I've ever seen on a football field where a quarterback tapped out. Yes, that was wrong. But you cannot tell me that in any point of last night's game, you cannot tell me that Joe Flacco was better than Anthony Richardson. You cannot tell me that Anthony Richardson would not have played any better, if not the same, as Joe Flacco against the Vikings last night. Yes, Joe Flacco only had one turnover last night. Big whoop. It should have been more than that. There were multiple passes that were thrown behind receivers. Multiple passes that were not even in the vicinity of wide receivers that should have been picked off. So Joe Flacco is lucky to have only had that one turnover. Getting sacked 3 times on the final drive, Flacco looked like he had zero control of this offense from start to finish. The Colts offense is just atrocious from the top to the bottom. The one thing that Richardson does give the offense is the ability for Jonathan Taylor to run the ball more effectively because the linebackers on the weak side are worried about Anthony Richardson's run ability. So when Jonathan Taylor shoots the gap, you immobilize the linebackers or even a second, giving Jonathan Taylor better runs. Yes, I understand not a lot of you are on the same page as me, but this is real talk. But Shane Steichen cannot put together a good game plan. That is clearly obvious this season. And you know what I get, and you know what? I get it. The Vikings are a really good team. I mean, granted, they were coming off 2 back-to-back losses, and their defense blitzes on damn near every single play. But for you, as the head football coach, you cannot put together any drive. You can't score a single touchdown in 4 quarters. The Vikings had the 30th best passing defense coming into this game, and Flacco had 179 passing yards and completed 57% of his passes. It is just funny to me that what Anthony Richardson was bad at all season long, Joe Flacco was just as bad, if not equally worse. Multiple overthrows, underthrows, just not accurate at all. Then you can't run the ball because you have a 39-year-old statue sitting back there. So the offense is even more hampered. It begs the question, should Steichen be on the hot seat at this point? And I know what a lot of you people will say, oh, it's way too soon for that. How could you say such a thing? He hasn't even coached 2 years. Coaches have been fired for less. This offense is strictly big play or nothing. There were multiple plays during the game last night where you had Trey Sermon in the flat or wide receivers sitting inside zone coverage, wide open, and Flacco wouldn't even attempt to get the ball to them because apparently Flacco was told that he has to throw it over 20 yards on every pass. Probably not what he was told. I'm just saying. Not to mention, Taylor had 13 carries for the entirety of the game. 13. And 8 carries were in the first half alone. He had 5 carries in the second half for all of those math experts out there. When the game was within a single score for most of the second half. Probably one of the more eye-catching statistics of the game was the fact that the Colts only had 23 minutes in time of possession. In case you didn't know, the entirety of an NFL football game, barring if there's overtime, is 60 minutes long. A more glaring statistic is that the fact this is nothing new. The Colts are ranked dead last in the NFL in total time of possession. Once again, I will state the fact this was not an Anthony Richardson problem. It carried over even after Anthony Richardson's last game, and you had Joe Flacco starting at quarterback against the Vikings. It's the same problem. The Colts had 7 penalties for 50 yards. I went over this last week, and I'm going to beat that dead horse again. The amount of penalties that the Colts team achieves on a weekly basis, whether it's holding penalties or illegal shifts or offside, this is one of the more undisciplined Colts teams that I can remember in recent memory. The amount of times penalties have killed drives for the Colts is just bonkers. It may be time for Shane Steichen to give the offensive play calling duties to Jim Bob Cooter. Laugh at the name all you want, because what the Colts have right now is not working. You had Frank Reich do the same exact thing, where he did not want to give up play calling duties. Whether it be pride or he didn't believe in his offensive coordinator, whatever it was, that ended up being his demise. Steichen really needs to consider something like this. He is a first-time head coach. And if the game plans and or schemes aren't working, then this is something that should be considered. You can't fix the ins and outs of this team if you were too worried about next week's game plan. But when it comes to the Colts' next game against the Buffalo Bills, Shane Steichen has already come out and stated that Joe Flacco is going to be your starting quarterback. At least that's what he said last night. Things could change. The NFL moves fast. We all know this. So you never know. But he also did state that at no point in the game last night did he have the urge to bring in Anthony Richardson. Just a little tidbit for you, Colts fans or NFL fans. But these next 3 weeks, the Colts are going to be running through a bit of a gauntlet, as they are going to be facing the Bills next week, followed by the Jets and the Lions. And then after that, they'll get a little break. Who knows? Maybe they'll lose against the Patriots. It's hard to tell at this point. So the Colts could easily walk out of these next 4 games, being 4-8 or 4-9, and still having no identity as a team. So we will have to see how this ends up playing out. But the offense is obviously not as improved as Shane Steichen would have thought it was going to be. But as Colts fans, we all know that the Colts organization likes to blow a lot of smoke towards our backsides. Stay tuned. Now let's transition into some college football that happened over the weekend. And boy, there were some ridiculous outcomes. Unless you were living under a rock over the weekend, South Carolina is good. They were a hop step away from beating LSU. They barely lost to Alabama. And this week they took down number 10, Texas A&M, in absolutely dominant fashion. They are a field goal or two away from being 7-1 and not 5-3. SEC also is fining South Carolina for a violation of the league's access to competition area policy after the Gamecocks fans stormed the field to celebrate an upset win against the Aggies. This being South Carolina's second offense in 2024, the university will have to pay $250,000. I think the university will be completely fine with this. South Carolina has been on the brink of success most of the season. They're just 2 wins away from being 7-1. It's a bit ridiculous how close those two losses were. But this win, man, talk about a monster win for an absolutely rising program. But the fans, they immediately hopped the wall, of course, between the stands inside Williams-Brice Stadium and went onto the field after the Gamecocks put a bow on the 44-20 victory over Texas A&M, which at the time they were ranked number 10 in the nation. And the only loss the Aggies had at that time was against Notre Dame. Go Irish. The Aggies were the last remaining undefeated team in the SEC. Now let's go on to another SEC game. Georgia and Florida. Now, to me, there is absolutely nothing scary about Georgia. Not with Carson Beck at quarterback. Ever since he started dating one of the Cavender twins, he has been killing this team beyond degree. His QBR this season is 101.7. You may say, that's good, man. Well, wait. Let's just dive in a little. He has 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and 2,302 passing yards. Now, for educational purposes here, he had 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 125.8 QBR last season. Rewind to 2022, he didn't play that much. I don't really count it, but we're here anyway, so let's talk about it. So, if you want to be more specific, he had 310 passing yards, 74.3 passing percentage, 4 touchdowns, 148.8 QBR. But you can obviously see that Carson Beck has regressed, or something else is going on here. If anything, to begin the season, he was one of the top Heisman candidates and one of the top prospects that could be coming out of college and entering the NFL draft. But now, you will be lucky to see him in a top 5 Heisman rankings. When a Georgia team is playing one of their top rivals, as in Florida, which they did over the weekend, most fans of teams would be satisfied with a win by 14 points. But when you are playing a team that is shorthanded, and that is putting it lightly, you should be blowing teams like this out. And Georgia has not blown any teams of this caliber out all season long. So there's no reason to be scared of Georgia. Do they have a good defense? Sure. They have a good defense every single year. But the offensive side of the ball, they are struggling massively. Beck looks completely lost right now. He has 6 interceptions to just 2 touchdowns over Georgia's last 2 games. The Bulldogs are winning in spite of him, not because of him. That's not something you want from your redshirt senior signal caller and supposed leader. It's not like he's in a little bit of a bad luck spot. A lot of these interceptions are just results of bad decisions or just bad throws. At least 2 of the 3 picks he tossed against Florida were due to the fact he missed on reading Florida's defensive alignment. The worst part is there might not be a better option on Georgia's roster. Your backups are Gunnar Stockton and Jaden Rashada, a former Gators transfer. They are very short on experience, and tossing them into a lineup this late into the year is asking for trouble. Penn State, Ohio State, the game of the weekend. Still don't understand why they're playing it at noon, but that's big noon football, I guess. Most schools would trade a lot for a consistent 10-win stability that Franklin brings to Happy Valley. And in a 12-team college football playoff, one that could expand even more as college football's decision makers never seem satisfied with the status quo. 10 wins is good enough. If you were any other team in the Big Ten, you would be ecstatic for a consistent 10-win team every single season. But when it comes to Happy Valley, a 10-win season just isn't good enough. Just look up the video of the fans in the stands. Or you can look up another video where James Franklin is walking through the tunnel. They're chanting some words there. When it comes to the 12-team college football playoff, the decision makers over years, they just have not been satisfied. Last year was FSU. This year, could it be Penn State? Will 10 wins be enough to sneak into the playoff? All that said, there comes a point when you have to ask the question, will Penn State ever truly break through under Franklin? Consistent playoff appearances are fine. But does it actually mean anything if the Nittany Lions come away from each year without any sort of substance? Last year, there were questions to be asked. If Penn State was ever going to break through. And I honestly thought that how they played last season, I thought that Franklin was going to lose his job. But up until Ohio State this past weekend, they were playing winning football. They were undefeated. And then the Buckeyes came to town. And you would think playing at home in front of 111,000 people and you hold the Buckeyes to 6 points in the second half, you would have ample opportunity to come up with some points. What did Penn State end up doing? They ended up scoring 3 points in the second half. At what point is James Franklin going to be? At what point is James Franklin going to be put under a microscope and examined? Because eventually, push is going to come to shove. Not only by the media, not only by the fans, but also the university. I understand that he's had success. I get it. And consistent playoff appearances are fine. But does it actually mean anything when the Nittany Lions come away from each year without any type of substance? It's becoming more clear throughout the tiers that Franklin isn't fit to win the big one. Saturday's 20-13 loss to Ohio State dropped Franklin to 0-11 against AP top 5 teams when he's leading a ranked team. That's the worst such record for a head coach since 2000. Once Penn State gets to the playoffs, which it almost certainly will, there's no hope that it will make it very far. A deeper Big Ten, including the likes of Oregon, makes the winning the conference more difficult on an annual basis, even if the Nittany Lions don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year. Just like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, it is not 1982, which, yes, that was the last time the Nittany Lions won a championship. I'm glad you asked. Against a Herschel Walker-led Georgia Bulldogs team. If that doesn't age you, I don't know what will. At some point, you have to look at the teams that are improving year by year and teams that are regressing year by year to determine if they're even worthy to be talked about. Yes, Penn State was undefeated, but everybody had this game circled as a letdown game by the Nittany Lions, and that is no mistake. Nebraska is another team that hasn't been relevant since the 1990s, and we saw over the weekend that they are even further away from being relevant than we had even imagined. Losing 27-20 to the UCLA Bruins, this is probably one of the more embarrassing losses of the season, if not the most embarrassing. Even though Deshaun Watson even though their head coach seems to be doing better in the position as the time grows on, but the team doesn't have a single bit of identity. This has to be one of the more embarrassing losses to Matt Rule as a head coach. In Nebraska's case, don't lose one-score games on a weekly basis, especially not when they are favored by over a touchdown against a team that took almost 2 months to get 2 wins. Yeah, there's a good chance that Nebraska, which was on a verge of getting to 6 wins a month ago, won't make a bowl game for an 8th consecutive year. The Huskers closed the 2024 season against USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. These are toss-up games at best. It's hard to feel confident in this Nebraska team getting at least 1 win against that remaining slate. Clemson Tigers and the Louisville Cardinals. My, oh my. The Clemson Tigers fell 33-21 in a massive upset loss to Louisville Cardinals on Saturday night in Death Valley. The loss dropped the Tigers to 6-2 overall and to 3rd place in the ACC standings at 5-1 in conference play with 2 games remaining in the league. Clemson outgained Louisville in total offense, 450 yards to 366. But those numbers are a bit misleading. The Tigers and quarterback Cade Klubnik threw the ball 56 times, but for only 228 yards, an average of just 4.1 yards per completion. The Tigers had 2 field goals blocked after promising drives stalled in Louisville territory. They turned the ball over on downs twice, including when they couldn't convert on a possible tone-shifting 4th and 1 from their own 34-yard line in the 3rd quarter. While the offense showed signs of life in the 4th quarter, it was too little too late. Even then, the Tigers showed no urgency with the clock, and Louisville leading by 3 scores at 26-7. Their 61-yard drive that ended with a Phil Mafah touchdown run took 5 minutes off the clock, with Clemson still trailing by 2 touchdowns. Clemson allowed 210 rushing yards, the 2nd highest total this season. They allowed Stanford to run for 236 yards in respect, and the Tigers' 40-14 win over the Cardinals. Dabo Swinney repeated a number throughout his post-game remarks, 7.8. That was the amount of yards Louisville averaged on ground Saturday. True freshman running back Isaac Brown accumulated 151 yards on 20 carries, including a 45-yard touchdown run in the 4th quarter that put the game out of reach. The Clemson defense had 0 sacks and 0 turnovers against a Louisville team that at the time was 5-3, with losses to Miami, SMU, and Notre Dame. They also ranked 64th in rushing yards per game. This is not a loss that should have happened to Clemson, but this is why we do not play our games on paper. One other team I would like to talk about is SMU. They are climbing the ladder, and they are improving week by week by week. And I can easily see them sneaking into the college football playoff. And there's another team a lot of people are talking about. They're finally starting to get some respect. The Indiana Hoosiers. It's kind of weird thinking about the Hoosiers being a football school, but hey, they got the coach, they got the transfers, they got the wins. And to me, you will hear it absolutely everywhere. Oh, look about the win quality, the win quality. It doesn't matter. These kids on this field are playing the games that are put in front of them, and they are winning. And they are winning big. Against Michigan State, they hadn't trailed in any game all season long, and they were down 10 points in the first quarter, and they scored 47 unanswered points. Indiana has proven themselves week in and week out. They deserve their respect. NCAA and college football committee. As many of you know, this podcast didn't really talk about baseball that much, being that the baseball season was basically over. But expect next season, there will be a lot more baseball talk. But let's discuss the fifth inning of that infamous World Series game. Wow. As the fallout from the Yankees' nightmarish Game 5 loss to end the World Series seems to just keep going on and on and on. Surely the fact they lost both games in the series started by ace Garrett Cole factors in. I mean, Cole mostly did his part, pitching in the seventh inning in both starts and allowing only one earned run in 12.2 innings of work. Capped off a postseason where he posted a 2.17 ERA in 5 starts in 29 innings. He was one of the more reliable pitchers, if not the most reliable pitchers, on the Yankees roster. He's the only second active pitcher with 4 World Series starts of 6 or more innings. The only other person on that list, Justin Verlander. There was only one word to describe the fifth inning, the 5-run fifth inning that resurrected the Los Angeles Dodgers in Game 5 of the World Series. Meltdown. And probably one of the worst choke jobs I've seen in recent years. And as a Braves fan, that touches my heart a little bit. Sorry, Yankees fans. The Yankees did not play a clean game last Wednesday night. Most of their mistakes in the fifth inning that had to be one of the ugliest in postseason history, one that wiped out the 5-0 lead on Aaron Judge's 2-run home run in the first inning and solo shots by Jazz Chisholm in the first and Giancarlo Stanton in the third. You have to know that when you play the Dodgers, they are completely stacked at every position. I mean, they nearly spent $500 million. You have to play a damn near perfect game. And in that inning, they basically handed the World Series to the Dodgers on a silver freaking platter. But the Yankees suffered an epic defensive meltdown in this fifth inning, committing 2 physical errors and 1 mental gaffe that allowed the Dodgers to score 5 unearned runs and tie the score at 5-5. Anthony Volpe's error allowed the Dodgers to load the bases. The Dodgers had their first 2 runners on in the fifth inning, and a prime double play candidate, Will Smith, was coming up to bat. A ground ball would have been huge to get from Cole as he attempted to keep the score at 5-0 New York. He hit that ground ball, but the result was far from what anyone could have ever expected. Garrett Cole failed to put a close to the inning by choosing not to cover first base. Back-to-back Yankees errors allowed the Dodgers to load the bases with nobody out, giving them a chance to cut deep into their 5-0 deficit. Despite the errors made behind him, Cole was unfazed. He struck out Gavin Lux and Shohei Ohtani with the bases loaded to keep the score at 5-0 and give himself a path out of the inning. He was 1 out away from the biggest escape job of the season. When Mookie Betts hit a ground ball to first base, it felt as if Cole had gotten out of the inning. A routine out was about to be executed. Until it wasn't. The Yankees had 2 ways out of the inning, and they failed to execute either of them, allowing a Dodgers run to score and extending the inning. We all know what happened next. Aaron Judge dropped a fly ball he usually catches in his sleep. Game 5 felt like Aaron Judge's night. He had struggled all postseason long and finally had erupted and showed signs of life. The 2-run homer he hit in the first inning looked like the player we had seen in the regular season. He even made an unbelievable catch in the 4th inning to rob Freddie Freeman of an extra base hit and end a potential Dodgers rally before it even could get started. Unfortunately, all of what he did in the 5th inning went out of the window when Judge dropped a routine fly ball as it gets. I mean, how does this even happen? Tommy Edman hit a lazy fly ball to center field, and Judge just dropped it. Judge was there. The ball was going to land in his glove, but he just failed to secure it. It's a play Judge can make in his sleep. It's a play any MLB player can easily make. Judge just dropped it. To make matters worse, this wasn't some scrub out there in center field. This was Judge's first error of the season. He saved it for the most routine of plays on the biggest of stages and shocked the entire world. And that changed the season entirely. You can call it the curse of Fat Joe, like Dodgers reliever Joe Kelly if you like. But this goes much deeper than that. According to Joel Sherman of the New York Post, Los Angeles game plan for exactly these types of blunders. What the Dodgers told their players in scouting meetings was the Yankees were talent over fundamentals. That if you run the bases with purpose and aggression, the Yankees will self-inflict harm, as was exposed by Betts, Tommy Edman, Freddie Freeman, etc. That was the value, was very high to put the ball in play to make the Yankees execute. Whether or not any of this baseball fundamentals argument will lead to changes in how GM Brian Cashman builds out his roster for 2025 and beyond, or how manager Aaron Boone and his coaching staff prepare their players in spring training and throughout the season, will be another question hanging over their heads this offseason. Baseball simply comes down to execution. If you don't execute and the other team does, then you're obviously going to win. And that's what we ran into in the World Series. What the Oklahoma City Thunder have accomplished early this season, I know they played 6 games so far, and they're playing another game tonight. But what they have accomplished should not be overlooked. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 6-0. Their defense has been laughably dominant, allowing just 91 points per 100 possessions during a perfect start. The offense hasn't been that great, but it doesn't have to be when the other team is in a straitjacket for 48 minutes. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is already launching his MVP campaign. Even though he should have won it last year, he's putting up 26 points, 7.5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. While Chet Holmgren has also been ridiculous, averaging 22.5 points, 11 rebounds per game, and 3.5 blocks per game. There's no such thing as a bad 6-0 start to the NBA season. If a team comes out of the gates and wins 6 straight games, something is going right. Even if they win every game by 1 point and look bad in the process, the Oklahoma City Thunder has not looked bad in the process at all this season. In fact, the Thunder have looked dominant en route to a 6-0 start, and the numbers just back it up. Oklahoma City is the first team in NBA history to win its first 5 games of the season by at least 12 points. Still, the scariest part of Oklahoma City's start is there's still plenty of room for improvement. It doesn't feel like this team is operating at its highest level yet, and no one can keep up with them. What are things going to look like when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams actually start cooking? This may sound crazy based on the stat you just read, but it's true. The Thunder still haven't played their best basketball, on one side of the court anyway. The team is 25th in the NBA in three-point percentage, 29th in free throw attempts, 17th in assists, and 19th in true shooting. They are not running on all cylinders, but yet their defense is toeing the line, and they are forcing them to win these games. The offense has not been nearly as efficient as last year's unit, which finished third in offensive rating. There's no reason for Thunder's offensive start other than just rust. It's the beginning of the season. So I would expect these numbers to quickly shoot up the scale as the team starts to get its offensive footing. And just the other night, the team scored a season high 137 in a rout of the Portland Trailblazers. I know, it's the Trailblazers. Yeah, whatever. So things are already improving on that side of the ball. If you're wondering how the Thunder have been so dominant while the offense still works out some kinks, here's how. Oklahoma City is first in defensive rating, first in steals, first in blocks, and first in points allowed. The defense is already flying around, contesting shots, poking balls free, and generally being just irritants. The raw stats of Alex Caruso haven't been great to start off the season, but he's exactly what this team wanted him to be when they signed him. A dog on defense. This version of the Oklahoma City Thunder is a finals contender. Even with a fine offense, this defense is good enough to lift the team to extraordinary heights. But we know this version of the Thunder isn't even the real version. The offense is going to get better, and they are going to get it together. There are some really, really good teams in the Western Conference. But right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder might be in a league of their own. And I, for one, am excited to see how they continue their path this season. I will be covering the Oklahoma City Thunder as they continue throughout the season. So stay on board if you are interested in Oklahoma City Thunder content. Now, I did want to touch on Vince Carter's jersey retirement ceremony. He became the first Raptors player to have his jersey retired by the franchise, which came into existence in 1995. There was also time for a few stories, including one about the rapper Drake as a child catching an armband that Carter threw into the crowd during the game. I don't know how much I believe that, but all right. Vince Carter was a number 5 overall pick in the 1998 NBA draft. He was traded to the Raptors on draft night in exchange for Anton Jamison, his college teammate at North Carolina. But what I am going to remember most is the 2000 dunk contest. Arguably the best slam dunk contest performance of all freaking time. And if you have not watched it or you are too young to watch it, I recommend you looking it up. Always been difficult to convey this contest importance to those who weren't around to experience it firsthand, but this dude made us reevaluate every single thing we ever thought we ever knew about dunking on that night. Vince Carter was otherworldly, but a lot of us had figured we'd seen it all at that point, or at least pretty close to it. So the presumption was that maybe he'd dazzle like Jordan-like free throw line dunk, or maybe another attempt he'd mix in an airtight windmill in there somewhere. I would have been happy with that. And in fact, I was looking forward to it. Then came the first dunk. After watching Tracy McGrady's first dunk, my heart sank a little bit because I wasn't sure Carter would be able to top it. McGrady's dunk was the exact type of dunk I'd been imagining Vince Carter might pull off. Super clean bounce reverse. But then, as well-known Carter went out and invented an entirely new dunk, and I'd literally never even imagined in my wildest dreams. Cuffing and full windmilling while spinning clockwise in the air, cleanest finish ever to boot. Dude changed the dunk world instantaneously. Then his third dunk came at a time when most of us were also pretty certain the only way to go between the legs was to have at least 25 feet of run-up space and to attack with the ball in hand. Jumping off one foot and hoping for the best. In the 90s, only J.R. Ryder and Kobe Bryant had successfully pulled it off, and it was a big deal. So when Carter opted to not only pull off a between-the-legs dunk off 2 feet, but to do it while catching a bounce lob from a teammate, dude again changed the world of everything we thought was possible. And of course, for his first final round dunk, as it was happening, I thought he was throwing the competition. He approached the rim as though he were going to pull off a routine one-hander, thought he'd run out of ideas, then to see him dangling his elbow a moment later, there are just no words. The honey dip, as they called it, is almost considered routine now. But 99.999999% of the world had never fathomed it at the time. The limbs of modern dunking innovation almost all stem directly from Carter's dunk contest performance in 2000. And that makes it tough to match the feeling of Carter's dunk contest through and through. Dude just deviated so far from the mean that evening, like Julius Erving setting off free throw line imitators for decades thereafter. Carter has induced the entire era of the 360 between the legs and elbow innovation, breathing new life into what many had considered dead. All told, Carter spent 6+ seasons with the Raptors and amassed 9,420 points, which remains fourth on the franchise's all-time scoring record list. In addition to winning Rookie of the Year, he was also he also made 5 All-Star teams and 2 All-NBA appearances during his time in Toronto. Carter played 22 NBA seasons, taking the court for the final time as a member of the Atlanta Hawks in 2020 at the age of 43. So, to Vince Carter, thank you for the memories. And to the retirement of the jersey, man, well deserved. And that is going to be it for today's episode of The Burn. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do so. We're going to be pumping out this content because we got NBA, we got NFL, we got college football. Man, it's the trifecta. Just keep on coming back and go ahead and click that notification bell. That way you do not miss a single episode, a single short. We're going to be posting nonstop. And if you had not followed us on all of our socials, go ahead and do that. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Facebook is running strong. We're coming close to 30,000 followers. Thank you for all that support me and continue to support me. And if you're new here, click that subscribe button. And this is Ryan Van Dever from The Burn, signing off. Peace. Have a great Monday.